I want to transition a little bit because I do want to talk about JT Miller a little bit here in this next block, 40 chess, because I like felt like we've made this joke for like, especially the Jim Benning time. It's like, is Jim Benning actually playing 40 chess with this move here? And we've heard from this management group, and we've heard from Jim Rutherford, and we've heard from everybody in that management group talking about this. This is a retool, not a rebuild. This is a short-term thing. My question has been, with some of the moves, it doesn't scream rebuild, but at least when the Canucks talk about retool so much, I wonder if it opens the door for an actual rebuild. And like, could this be a situation where the Canucks could do a strong rebuild? It would include trading Thatcher Demko. In my eyes, it would include trading JT Miller. It would be one of Besser or Garland, moving all of those guys out and just trying to get I don't know, there needs to be another level in between the retool and the rebuild, because I don't think rebuilds are as long as they used to be anymore either. Like in today's day and age, the way that you can utilize cap space during a rebuilding period, you can turn things around pretty quick. Like, Quads always brings up the Montreal Canadiens, what they did in the past 12 months. They have initiated a rebuild, and they've also gone really quickly into the retooling stage off of that almost at this point, and now still have a bunch of picks to deal with at that point. So if the Canucks have been talking about a retool, what moves would signify to you that they may actually be playing 4D chess? Because I'm saying Thatcher Demko. If you move him, you are rebuilding. Like, you are not competing next year or the year after if you move Thatcher Demko. If you move on from the JT Miller contract, like, to me, bravo. That is a rebuilding move. You are not going to be going for the playoffs next season if you move someone like JT Miller for a prospect or a pick or whatever it may be. So what to you would be some of those things? Where do you want to start here with if they are playing 4D chess on a rebuild, not a retool?
First of all, I don't think they are, because why would you sign Kuzmenko when, I mean, you look at Tarasenko, who has a more proven playoff track record, yes, but he also only has 10 goals this season. He's been barely productive. Mm-hmm. And after adding Mikkola, the Blues found a way to get a first-round pick out of it. And Tarasenko has like a $7.5 million cap hit, and he has a no trade clause, so it limited their suitors. So it's like, right? Like, if you're rebuilding, there's no way you would have.
You were out there a month ago screaming, Kuzmenko's not going to get a first-round pick. Like, you are so wrong. He would have got you a first-round pick at this draft, or at the deadline here.
Yeah, because of that contract. But anyway,
contract and production.
So that's why initially I don't think they are. But if they, let's say, had a change of heart, I'll say this: I don't think it has anything to do with Demko. I don't think it has anything to do with Miller. My indication would be, what are you going to do with the cap space? Because they're going to at least have some in the offseason, even if it's just with what was left behind in terms of Bo Horvat. They're going to have some cap space for the rest of this season, obviously, because of Mikheyev on LTIR. Pearson can go on LTIR soon. My question is, what are they going to do with it? Because in the offseason, we've seen time and time again with this organization, when they've been in this retool mindset rather than a rebuild, they've gone out and they've signed guys, right? They went out and for immediate help, right? Back in, 2018, signing Beagle, Roussel, Schaller. 2019, signing Myers, signing Ferland. You look at even this management group last offseason, what did they do with the cap space? They re-signed Besser. They re-signed Miller, clearly in an attempt to bolster the roster for this season. They signed Mikheyev. Those are all sort of win now moves for guys in Miller and Mikheyev's case, who are over the age of 25. So that's my question. Are they going to go out in the offseason and then look to sign a centerman who can help them on a sort of mid-range contract? Are they going to go out and try and sign a 27, 28-year-old defenseman like a Damon Severson, for example, who's expected to hit the free agency market? Or if they're rebuilding, then what they would do is take on bad contracts, take on these $3 or $4 million cap hits that last a season or two, and get significant assets out of it. So that's going to be my tell, is what do they do with the cap space? Not necessarily with Demko or Miller, because I'll say this. With Miller, you'd move him sure, it may be a sign that you're looking at a rebuild, but honestly, even if you're retooling, it's probably in your best interest.
Yeah.
You look at Demko, right? Demko, yes, theoretically, you'd think, okay, like, are they going down the rebuild direction now? Especially because of how valuable that contract is. But part of it could also be like, you don't know until you see what they'd get back, right? Because think about a team like Buffalo, right? That needs goaltending. They have a pair of really highly touted goaltending prospects, Devin Levi and another NCAA goaltender. I can't remember
They're saying he might go
his
to,
name, but he's not expected to sign there, right?
Yeah.
Point is, if you move Demko for a haul that includes a goaltender like that, who may be ready in 2 years, especially in Levi's case, especially under Ian Clark,
Eric Portillo.
Yeah,
his name.
Right. So if you acquire one of those guys in a sort of Demko sort of trade, and you expect that goaltender to be ready for you as a starter in 2 or 3 years, then that still fits a retool timeline, especially if that guy is then on an ELC where he's providing a significant bargain. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating that that's what the Canucks should do. I'm just saying that that's an example of a trade you could look at swinging where, yes, you move on from Demko, but it may not necessarily signal that you're looking to blow things up.
Right. I think the Demko thing is interesting because, like, to throw a wrench into that as well, say you get one of these goalie prospects in there, you also have Artur Silovs, who has been able to really gain a lot of experience this year. It's just the goaltending situation. Like, when I look at it next season, I wouldn't be confident. And the year after that, you still don't have confidence to be competing at that point. If you're talking quick 2-year retool, which is like, when Durant asked a question about 3 years, and it was like, I don't want to say laughed at, but Jim Rutherford was like, oh, like 3 years. Yeah, we'll definitely be competitive by then. Like, that doesn't happen if you move Demko, I don't think. Because I don't think there's enough, unless you really hit, unless you nail this prospect who comes in and he's a 22-year-old starter, which, like, how often does that happen?
Yeah. Or maybe they, like, Tristan Jarry's local kid. Rutherford and Alvin will know him well.
Yeah, he's not he's Clark guy, though.
Agent.
He's not an Ian Clark goalie.
Fair enough. But I mean, that's a sort of example where it's like, if you get that guy for free.
Was it Cal Peterson is a name?
Yeah.
To see, like, I think he's the type of goalie that actually fits with Ian Clark's style. So when you look at LA, they still have a lot of prospects and players that would be available. Like, they still have that. That's so much depth back there, man. Like, Helge Grans is still there. They added that Jack Sparks monster kid who's a right D. Like, they have a lot of players still in that system that could be moved for a situation like that. It
is the cap space for me, man, because even under the Benning regime, that was the tell. Because sure, they could say, oh, we're drafting top 10 every year. They could, like, once in a blue moon, maybe sell a player like Alex Burrows at the deadline when they, like, really had to and knew that they weren't going to bring him back. But the biggest tell was that they never, ever weaponized their cap space.
And that's the thing with this team in the past offseason here. They were going for it. They were adding Ilya Mikheyev. They were lucky to land Andrei Kuzmenko, obviously on a ELC contract, so it's very different. But you mentioned they signed Brock Besser to a big deal. They were looking to compete. And that's why I think so much needs to change now. If you are going to go that way, you need to start with, like, I don't want to say fixing your problems, but just adjusting your problems, right? To set it, because I think you can make one type of adjustment to retool. You need to make a completely different type of adjustment to rebuild. And that's what the Canucks management group needs to do here. It's like the decisions between the two need to be made here pretty soon, because you want to see the direction of this team and how many players should actually be moved in the offseason if you're trying to retool, which players are actually going to stick around here. How's the leadership? Like, there's so many questions to ask about what this team is going to do, if they're competitive in 2 years or if they're competitive in 4 years. And it's two very different roads to get to those points.
Also, we're now just starting to hear some chatter about, oh, could the Canucks look to re-sign Luke Schenn? Like, come on. No. Are we serious? Like, that's another thing where it's like, that's another reason why I'm like, I don't believe that these guys are really looking at a rebuild. Is like, because if you're rebuilding, it's like you don't even think about it twice. You sell them for the highest bid possible. The only possible reason for that to sort of come out is if you're trying to which I don't think is the case, would be if you're trying to sort of create this narrative for other teams and in the public that, ooh, we may re-sign him, so you better step up your offer. Otherwise, we'll just keep him. Like, unless you're
this is what I'm talking about with the 4D chess. Like talking about a retool, talking about are they set? Like,
no, I don't think so.
I don't want to convince myself to that point. I'm talking about retool. They re-signed Kuzmenko. They're like putting all these smoke screens out, but they actually are 4D chess rebuilding. That's the way I'm looking at the possibility. I'm trying to be positive about it.
I would love to be positive about it, but I'm not gonna unless I see what they do with the money. Which that's another sign is Rutherford even going back to Pittsburgh. It's like the second he gets cap space, boom, it's gone. I'm spending it.
Yeah, that you're right. The cap space is
so
the way
like
is
I don't have that faith until I see it. A talk is great, right? They've left enough breadcrumbs in the way that they've talked about so many different things, whether it's draft picks or young players or major surgery or the core. The core, doesn't need to be, isn't necessarily the problem. That it's like, like there's enough, you can compile enough quotes to sort of believe either way. But when you look at their action, because that speaks way more than their words, every action to this point has indicated that it's a retool rather than a rebuild.
Yeah. Commander Vander with a great comment here says, sadly, it's a delusion, Chris. Probably right. Well, let me talk myself into it. Have some. What's this? What happened to the going into the weekend positive thing here, Harm? I can't have a little positivity in my life.
I mean, you're implying here that you're pretty correctly implying here that a retool is highly unlikely to be successful. But hey, I mean, I didn't say that they're gonna screw it up, even though they could if they retool.
Very easily could.